Welcome back to the Nasty Work Podcast. I am Nia Senior with my amazing co-host, as always, Coach Slaw. Today, we have our very first guest, our friend, our fellow colleague, Seattle superfan, Hugh. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me. This is my favorite podcast. I'm excited to be a part of it. I might be deceiving today wearing the Mystic stuff, but I promise I'm a Seattle super fan.
We love to see it, and we're sorry for your loss.
Too soon.
Yes. So, to start it off today, we're going to get into some nasty news. I feel like it's been super hectic in terms of the W universe in the last 2 weeks since the last time we spoke to y'all. So, first up, kind of sad news, but we got to talk about it. Our beloved teaspoon, Teresa Weatherspoon, has been fired, y'all. Let go from the Chicago Sky as their head coach after only being there for 10 months. Y'all, initial thoughts, feelings, how do we feel about this?
It's wild to me. I hope it's okay that I step in, but I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts on it. I'm surprised after 1 year full of injuries, a team full of injuries. It was kind of funny watching their team towards the end of the season. They had more people hurt than available to play. But it's a surprise to me. Someone so respected like Teresa Weatherspoon, and for her to only have 10 months, to be able to make the most of this opportunity, it seems a little bit unfair. I feel like there's a little bit more going on than what they have said to us. So what do you all think?
Equally shocked. It's a shocker. Really? Again? Because the Chicago Sky made several missteps over the past few years in that front office, losing out on great players like Kalia Copper, Meesman, and others like Candace, having opportunities to rebuild like this, where you get some of the best picks available in the draft in Angel and Camilla, where you add pieces like Kennedy. You get the most production out of them. You see the connection they've built with the coach. You see the growth that they've experienced over the season, and the team really outperformed their projections and underwent some injuries, as all teams do. But when your key piece down low, rebounding, is gone, and Kennedy struggling with illness, and all of those things add up, on top of the fact that the front office traded away Marina Mabrey, who has been a star in the playoffs thus far and has really glued Connecticut together, having another shooter out there that can be clutch in the end of games. In my opinion, it's a seriously missed opportunity at best, a fuck up at its rawest. And Teaspoon will be okay because Teaspoon is Teaspoon. The resume speaks for itself. And we've seen what they can do with just a year and a lot of grinding and learning and pouring into folks. Who knows what they could do with a more veteran roster and a GM or other members of a team that actually believe in their vision and want to work collaboratively with them to build a solid championship contender. So best of luck to Teaspoon. Chicago, this was short-sighted.
Yeah. I think you make a couple good points. I think two things, like the injuries, because Camilla had her shoulder injury in the beginning. Like you said, Kennedy was in the hospital, in the hospital. Angel had wrist surgery. There was some serious injuries that really hit them. And like you said, it's to be expected. But I think the second point that you said about someone who's invested in the vision, if they had people who are invested in the vision, they'd say, okay, this season we learned a lot. Let's build on it and keep going. But the fact that they were like, everybody got hurt, let's blame this or hang this on the coach, that's kind of interesting to me. But like you said, she'll be okay. It is wild, though, that we're down to one Black head coach in the W. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I just feel like she should have had a little bit more opportunity like some of these other coaches.
Exactly. That's just my whole sentiment. Initially, I feel sadness for Teaspoon. Clearly, I was very excited about this opportunity. So many people, the city of Chicago, her former teammates were excited to see Teaspoon in this role. It's just sad because You know that Black women, especially in head coaching roles, especially in the W, just don't get the same opportunities that non-Black women receive. Time to build, a chance to make mistakes, an opportunity to learn. Because from what we know of Teaspoon, she was wanting to learn and get better. Everything wasn't perfect on the court. Even if you have somebody in that role who wants to learn and wants to get better, that's like half the battle. You know what I mean? So that's just my first initial is just sadness for her, sadness for the team, sadness for Angel Kennedy. Angel finally got a coach she felt like believed in her. Same thing with Kennedy, and then having that abruptly taken away is just not great for the organization. It's not going to do great morale for their locker room. But then the second thing that comes to mind is like questions, like what was the expectation that they set for Teaspoon? Did they communicate that effectively? Was it a playoff or bust? Like, hey, you know you're going to lose your job if we don't make the playoffs this year. Honestly, that was unrealistic expectation. If that's what was said, dealing the roster that they had, they were projected to be 12. They almost were a playoff contending team. You mentioned the injuries that they had. So
they're
just
one game short of the playoffs.
One game. And their record was even better than Atlanta's in the regular series. So it literally was one loss. So it's just like, yeah, I wanted to know, just having those questions of like, what was the discussion like behind closed doors in her hiring? What was it that she needed to accomplish that she didn't accomplish that made it to where she can, continue on? So yeah, initially that, but also just that she's also, like you mentioned, Q, the last Black woman. Well, there's only one Black woman head coach left in the W. And so that takes me to our next point of news, which is not so sad to me, but is Tanisha Wright, the head coach of the Atlanta Dream, has been fired. So we are now down another Black woman head coach as of today. Initial thoughts on this?
We only had 3. And then you just chopped 2 of them off. And I hate to admit it, but who knows where Noelle is going to end up. Seattle would be silly to let her go. I think Atlanta, the writing was on the wall. They kind of were in a similar vein. They had a lot of injuries, but this wasn't coach's first season, and I think Atlanta should have did a lot better. I think they just snuck into the playoffs over Chicago, as you mentioned, Nia. That was a little bit of a surprise to me, not pending the injuries, but just how they did a season ago compared to how they did this season. I think they should thank Miss Tina Charles. I think they should thank her for everything she's contributed to the organization. But I'm not too surprised about this. I don't know how you all feel, but
I think that you hit the nail on the head. They were a playoff team, easily in the playoffs last year, and they go out in the offseason, they get more pieces. They become a better team, talented on paper wise. So it's like, okay, did we get to see it come to true fruition? Maybe not. But to have a worse season with more talent and more time in your head coaching role, you had to know that the pink slip was on the way. So.
Yeah, this is a good example. I think for those who are doubting maybe where there may be bias at play of what I think evaluating someone's ability and fit to coach and lead your team looks like. You're talking about someone who didn't just have a bad season this year at 15 and 25. Over the course of 3 years, went 48 and 68. Got to the first round of the playoffs twice and swept twice. Like, at some point, there has to be a sign that we can get over the hump. Okay, I need this type of piece if we're going to do that. They bring in a Jordan Canada and others, and still the needle's not moving. And for the Dream also this season, I saw multiple instances where there were winnable games that they lost. And that's a different scenario and context and evaluation, in my opinion, in one season full of young players who are learning how to adjust to this league and missing a key part of your offense midway through that season and having to kind of rebuild and pivot to doing something else. Like, that's a different scenario altogether where it's like, all right, but at the end of the day, it's business for these organizations. A lot of them don't have long-term goals and intentions for the W. I do think there is something to be said about the fact that Chicago historically is the first private ownership league without any tie to any other organization to enter this league. And we know some of the history of the ownership of Atlanta Dream and whether or not they have grown from that is yet to be seen. So, yeah, I wasn't surprised that Tanisha Wright was let go. Like Becky Hammond said the other day, coaches lose games, they get fired, but that's how this job works. And
how it works.
I do think with the right fit, that coach could be a successful coach, but I just don't think this was it.
I think you're right. I feel like Chicago overperformed expectations and Atlanta underperformed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really make sense why, outside of coaching, to be honest. I know they had an injury bug like Jordan Canada, but former Storm players, I love her. I also think Titus Parker didn't have as good a year this year as she did last year either. She was also injured towards the end of the season. So I think there were some things that played a role.
Questions around depth and investment in their development.
Right.
You've got some other talent that's raw talent, but that could have been helpful, in my opinion, to your rotations. It's just not. It was, it just wasn't it. It just wasn't.
They don't have two rookies in the starting lineup, like Chicago did. But they got
a killer in Ryan Howard. They have a killer in Alicia Gray. They have a killer in Tina Charles. It's just like
we're talking about
what it is. What I always joke about with the Atlanta Dream. They remind me of a team that pulled up in the van and people would sleep. And the coach is like, hey, get your shoes on. When we get there, it's going to be about 4 minutes before a warm up before you where you got to play. So stretch out where you are.
Lace up.
Game ready when we get there. Don't be putting your shit on when we get in the gym. Sometimes they would show up that way. And I would be like, I don't understand with the talent and the why this is happening.
Alicia Gray won both challenges at the All-Star. She won the 3-point and the skills challenge. And so I don't understand. I mean,
when you got a lot of raw talent but lack organization, you're only going to get so far in this. It's a systemic thing. And the coach has to organize the team. That's the whole point. Otherwise, we could all just show up to the gym on time. We could all do our individual work.
Right. We have talent. We're not cohesive in any manner. That's like what Atlanta looks like, where you're like, all of these women are fantastic players. We all seen them in college. We're like, these are all fantastic players. But how are you sneaking into the 8th spot? It doesn't make sense. They should have been 6, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. So we had 2 firings, but we also had a mutual departing in terms of Kurt Miller leaving LA leaving Kurt Miller. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, what say you on that?
Kurt, I'm not the biggest Kurt Miller fan. Do I think that he is a good coach in certain circumstances? Definitely. But I feel like Kurt's claim to being a great coach has been more so on his players and the situations that he's been in, more so than his actual coaching ability. And so I feel like him being in LA really poked those holes into that theory of like he's a great coach. Instead of just him having veteran players that are just elite players, Olympians, Hall of Famers. And so when he had a team full of young talent, I just don't think he knew what to do with it. Especially when it comes to Rickea Jackson, the lack of minutes she received earlier in the season is just something that you simply cannot overlook. Do I think Kurt deserved more time maybe in LA? Because we know LA is a flawed organization as well. Like, we're going to talk about Chicago being flawed. LA is definitely flawed. They've had, I think, 17 coaches in 28 seasons, which is a lot. They also don't have a practice facility and all the things that other organizations have. I think Kurt is not a bad coach. He just maybe needs a different situation, and LA is just not the place for him. So if it really was a mutual, like, hey, I don't want to be here and we don't think that you're the fit here, that actually makes sense to me. Yeah, and I hope that he finds his next place him employment somewhere else. Maybe not as a head coach.
Maybe college or something.
Yeah, not college.
So I don't want to see him at the head. He's a panicky kind of guy. I don't know what you all think about that. Like I had mentioned his clip in Phoenix when he was coaching and he was like on the bench and he was like, "You guys are gonna get me fired because you can't score a layup." Panicky kind of guy. And I feel like when you have a young team, LA is another team where Rikia should have been starting from the beginning of the season. If that was the case, it would have been 2 rookies in the starting lineup with Cam Brink and Rikia. You know what I mean? But even outside of that, it was like a hodgepodge of team, right? Got De'Erica Hamby, got Kia Nurse from the Storm last year, and then bam, Cam gets hurt for the season. All of those things might come, but you have to have someone at the head who's very sure, has a long-term plan. And I like him. He's displayed, like you said, Nia, he's a good coach. He has the ability to be a head coach. But for a young LA team, they need somebody a lot different. I think they just need somebody a lot more calm. That's just my opinion on it. So,
yeah.
I think Kurt is a good coach. I think Kurt does have some tendency to play it close to the vest because that's what he's known to work in this league, right?
Yeah.
Like when you have tried and true, you know what you're going to get every night out of players like the Connecticut core. Why wouldn't you play like that, right? This is what works. Exactly. This is what works. I saw Kurt from the beginning when I'm like, okay, this rotation, the girls scoring more points in 2 minutes and getting more rebounds in 2 minutes than you're starting.
He forgot who he was.
It takes a while with a coach like Kurt to build trust. And I'm not necessarily certain that making this analogous to where Teaspoon wanted to coach Angel Reese, wanted to get that pick. Right. Like Kurt had in his mind, oh, I want to coach a Rikia Jackson. I want her to be a building block of my organization when I get over there. Right. I also don't think Kurt thought they were losing Nneka.
True.
And that's a big one. Like, that's a really big one. Okay, because Hamby and Nneka looks way different.
Way different, true.
Right? So I think, and they have some injuries too, as everyone does, because this league is a part of it, right?
Contact sports.
These rosters are only 12 people deep. I think it would have been interesting to see what Kurt learned from this season after he made some adjustments. What could he do with next year? I don't think this was enough time to really. I don't think Kurt is a bad coach. I think he's slower to make adjustments. He's slower to trust. I do question some coaches' ability to coach players who can understand their system, right? But don't need their system to be effective. Some coaches have trouble trusting players like that. Yeah. Players like Rikia Jackson, like Isaiah Cook, they understand the game. Right? They're basketball players. So we know like that's how the play goes. I know but I saw this and read this.
Right.
And some coach, high IQ and high understanding of how their style of play fits into that.
Right.
Case, right? Without having to go by the book. And I think when you have that combinations of a younger player, particularly a guard or a forward or somebody who's in a new position like Rikia was to and then you have an idea of what you think they should be doing, and then it turns out they do something different, it still works. But you need to be able to know that they can do what you ask them to do. I think sometimes it takes coaches longer to trust players in that way. Whereas I think a Teaspoon more meets you where you are and kind of leans in with it.
Right.
It's like, that's your strength.
Right.
Double down on your strength, baby girl.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because if you notice, Rikia is one of the smartest players.
She is.
Ever.
We'll just pray for a player like that.
She started getting more time when she started scoring more within the system. If you really watch the season, How many times do we see her curl around, read something, and pull up around the free throw line? Or do a step back or move to create more distance or space to operate that way? But she did it that way instead of another look we know she could get. She has the skill set to get it. She started doing it his way a little more.
And in that system.
Try restraining certain personalities or minds about basketball, like a Kennedy or a Rika.
Oh yeah.
I hear you, coach, but I know what I can do.
Watch this three.
You know, I'll look for that next time, but I know what I can do.
Right.
And so that might not be his style of player.
And I think coaches are going to have to evolve when we're talking about this next generation of players. They're Gen Z kids. As someone who's technically a Gen Z, people that came up before us, it was like your parents, people you listen to, you do as you're told.
Right.
You're not supposed to question authority in any type of way. I feel like that's the outlook that Kurt and a lot of other coaches have in basketball. But a lot of Gen Z kids are like, hey, well, I completely understand that you want me to do it this way, but have you heard of this? Like, technology has made it so where we can do it this, where we can the same thing you want to accomplish quicker, faster, in a better way.
Right.
Kind of like trying to teach an old dog new tricks.
Right.
And so I feel like long term, coaches are going to have to make that adjustment if they want to be able to relate to their players. But it also will just make for better basketball in general, because it's like, hey, I know my strengths better than anything else. You can teach me a system and I can play in that, but I know my strengths. And if I can play to them and you allow me that freedom to do so, that only brings trust between us, but it makes the basketball better too.
Imagine telling Juju, like, be a system player. Like, don't play it naturally. Like, that just doesn't.
You can build a system around that player if that's your intention, but I don't think Kurt's intention, obviously, was to build a system around a Rakia.
Right.
Like, he had a different vision for that team.
Right.
This ain't working how I thought it would. Even when they're trying their best to execute, this is not turning out the way I thought it would. That's a different situation. And that's why I think another year would have made some difference.
I don't know. I just feel like the innate quality that a great coach has to have is the ability to pivot. We're telling players all the time, you have to pivot, you have to make adjustments. The coach has to be able to do the same. You're too slow to do that. Are you a great coach? In my book,
are a great coach. You just, this league is unforgiving. A 3-week training camp and almost no practice. And if you're in LA, you have to fly everywhere to play people.
True.
Right. I'm not trying to make excuses, and I'm not like a male coach apologist. I'm just saying, I think it's different if you're on one of these cushy ass fucking salaries that the NBA coaches get, and you've been had chartered flights, and you got a G League team and a practice squad ready to bring players in if somebody's injured and all this.
Right.
These organizations don't give coaches a fair shot generally. And then when you add the layers of bias we've already discussed, it gets crazy.
Right.
It gets really crazy.
Yeah.
Well, you played in the league and you were an all-star. Shouldn't you get us to a championship?
In what season? 10 months?
It's like Becky Hammond did her first year. Becky Hammond inherited a squad that had already been developed.
3 number one picks. 3 number one picks.
Number one picks on it.
Well, 4 last year if you count Candace.
Right. Correct. Inherited that and built off of that. That's a completely different situation.
And they have all the resources. Think about their ownership too. Anything that Becky needed to make that team better or to accomplish what she wanted to, she executed. She had that at her disposal. So, well,
one thing Mr. Day was going to do is spend some money.
Okay? That's you want 100,000? Come on, come talk to us.
What you're going to do is spend some money.
Come talk.
So to wrap this up, do we feel like there are any other coaches in the W that are in the hot seat right now? Do we feel like there's anybody that's like, you might need to brush that resume up. You might need to be on LinkedIn, Buki.
I got one opinion. I know he's new. Take it or leave it. This is my opinion, though. Phoenix. I forget the gentleman's name right now, obviously, because I'm on the spot. Phoenix, though, that's my question mark. Let me add one. Those are the 2 squads where my opinion on Phoenix is stacked, but I also understand they're in a time of transition. Once DT leaves, like, I love Diana Taurasi, but once Diana Taurasi leaves, I think it's going to become Kalia Copper's team, and then they'll have a little bit more of an identity right now. But I also feel like they should have been a stronger team. BG, Copper, Cunningham, Diana Taurasi, they should have been a little bit stronger, but they're in a time of transition. Dallas, again, the injury bug, but there's just no way a team with Enrique, Natasha Howard, Satu Sabli. I know Satu didn't play half the year until after the Olympics. There's just no way that team should have did as bad. Like they didn't even qualify for the playoffs. That doesn't make sense. Those are my two question marks.
I think you hit it on the nail. Those are definitely my two question marks. Tramel, they had the same squad, like you said, injuries that they had last year. Like it really didn't get any worse, didn't really get any better. Now, mind you, the other teams in the league did get better. So it's like, okay, you need to improve in some aspects to be able to compete. But from being a solid playoff team to almost winning a game in the playoffs last year, there's no way that you should have been damn near the 12th team this year, aside from Satu's injury. Ridiculous. Right. Now, Mr. Girl Dad, he just got them shooting three. Like, I just don't feel like he is the person for this job or has the knowledge necessary in terms of women's basketball. Maybe he does, and we just haven't seen it yet because it's only been year one. But at what point were you going to make some adjustments? It literally was shoot as many threes as possible. Win a game. That was his game plan, and to me, that's just not effective, especially with
maybe that was the game plan. I think some of them Natasha Cloud threes earlier on.
Oh yeah.
Mrs. I'm the shooter. She's been trying to tell y'all.
Playoff, maybe in the playoffs.
You know what's funny to me about Phoenix is I think he figured out what he needs to do. It has very little to do with a scheme. It has a lot more to do with get them mad. For some reason, I don't know if it's how hot it is in Arizona or what, but that's a hot-headed ass team. But it ends up translating into good play.
You get a tech.
Right. They had the most techs of the season. They had like 21 techs on the season between the players or something like that. The most finds. It would also help if they could make shots. That would I think it would have also helped if BG
more dominant, honestly.
I don't think BG is physically 100%.
I agree.
Knowing the skill level and athleticism I've seen out of BG in the past, I don't think that was there. Even on a hot shooting night, you're going to lose if you can't play defense. Maybe he had a sense of some of the offensive things, but I don't think a lot of men that come in to coach this league who haven't had experience coaching it that much do is anticipate how physical this game is.
Right.
How inconsistent the refereeing is. How you have to temper that and train around that and work your magic around that. Like, it's not getting better. And then when you have a hot-headed team that's always getting teed up, like, you're going to get refereed even worse. When you have a player who's a 7-footer, you're going to get reffed even worse. And when you have a player that's wearing a MAGA hat in commercials, you're going to get refereed even worse.
MAGA Barbie.
So I think, again, learning. We'll see if there are adjustments made.
But last in nasty news, we found out that the expansion draft is coming up and it will be held on December 6th. Another episode, we will go more in depth in how that works, all of the specs. But just want to let y'all know that we do have that date, December 6th. So that brings us to why we have Q on here today. We got to talk to a Seattle fan, a super Seattle fan at that. Las Vegas Aces played the Seattle Storm in the first round of the playoffs. They swept the Seattle Storm, but
it hurts.
We're looking into the future. We want to know what can the Storm do next season to get over that hump, because we saw glimpses of hope, lots of promise with this team, with the new pieces they added this year. We want to talk about not the 2024 season, but more so of what 2025 looks like for the Seattle Storm and what they need to do in the offseason to make those things come to fruition. So, Q, take it away. This is you. So, let us know what you see.
This is an opportunity of a lifetime to talk about the things I think about anyways, but with some of my favorite basketball minds. Thank you. I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, grew up watching Sue Bird. We're so lucky, Seattle, 4 championships all in my lifetime. You know, it's been a wonderful experience to be a Seattle Storm fan. But unfortunately, the last 2 years has been a time of transition. Sue Bird retired. You like that? Sue Bird retired. one of the GOATs of the league. One of my favorite players of all time. Breanna Stewart left to New York. You know what I mean? And then we had last year, Seattle only won 11 games. So, what a refreshing experience to have Nneka Ogwumike, Skylar Diggins-Smith, 2 free agents picked up in the offseason. This was a very productive season. 25 wins. We got 14 more wins this season. That is even get two Hall of Famers. That's still a really hard thing to do from 11 wins to 25. So I want to shout out Noelle Quinn. I think she did an amazing, sensational job. One of the Black women holding it down in the league. I'm a big fan. But, I think we were left with a little bit of a sour taste in our mouth. So I wanted to preface with the good stuff before we get into the nitty-gritty of the playoffs, because unfortunately being swept in the first round of the playoffs, we didn't make the playoffs last year, but I think our hope was, okay, we go to the playoffs, we're going to win at least one. We had Gabby Williams, Joel Lloyd, Ezzie McLemore, Nneka, Sky. I think we thought it would be a lot different. Not winning one game, that hurts. I truthfully think we should have won that first game. I think we had but I think it showed a little bit of where we lack. And I know that that's what we're going to get into. My overall opinion is I think we played well. I think it's a few things, I always go back to the truths that we have to remember. This was Jewel's first game back. She had a knee injury. Her first game back was the first game against the Aces. She had missed about 2 games before that. Yeah. Ezzie didn't even play the first game. She played the second game because she had the concussion injury that had her out. And we still almost won the first game, even with Ezzie out. Gabby had only played 13 games before that. She played the season before, but she only played 13 games. So I think there's some things that, given a little bit more time, it's funny that we just talked about New York, because New York last year made it to the championship game. But what did 1 year do for New York? Look at them. They have a sense of identity. They're invested. They know their personnel. Seattle, give them 1 year. That's all I ask, is give them 1 year. I think we'll be back. I think it'll look way different. It's wild that even having Ezzie out, we still were almost winning. We were leading that game through the third quarter. We lost in the fourth quarter because we only scored 2 points. We only scored 2 points.
Well, that made some more layups.
We beat ourselves.
The shooting was just rough.
It was. Nneka was trying to get that mid-range.
Yeah, and that usually is butter for Nneka. And then some threes that were taken.
We can't shoot 3. We're the lowest shooting 3-point percentage.
Gabby Williams, you are not a 3-point shooter. Statistically, that's not your thing, right? Mm-hmm. You're great at so many other things, every other thing, really. That's the only thing I would say could improve about your game.
She probably knows that too.
But I think there were some periods where it went into desperation mode, things y'all really didn't have to do. You don't have to play shooting match with the Aces, going back and forth. You don't have to rush. There were some things you just didn't have to do. And there were also some things one of you needed to do.
Who was that?
Show the fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
I love you, Jewel. I've been defending you a long time. I have the text thread to prove it. I have the DMs to prove it. Like, I was like, no, y'all don't understand. Jewel's hurt. When you said your knee wasn't hurting, I cat because I've played with a torn meniscus and ACL before. And one of the telltale signs of a knee injury affecting your game is you cannot skip on that leg. You can't get lift on that leg like you want to and land like you want to. If you watch those games, I guarantee Jewel is not trying to jump that much. And you add on, she has to guard Jackie Young, the strongest in the and maybe like pound for pound, Jackie, I think, is stronger than a lot of post players.
She's pure muscle. She's lean.
So, I was giving you a lot of slack because I feel like it was clear to me that Noelle's adjustments were that Nneka, Skylar, Gabby, y'all need to take on more of the scoring burden because I need Jewel in there, focus on Jackie. But it got out of hand. Like, we went away from Jewel completely.
Because Jewel's the best perimeter defender. You did say that. She is one of the best.
One of the best 3-point shooters they've got.
Yeah. And we did not have a lot.
So it was a mess.
It was.
I think 2 or 3 games even before that, the identity of the team started to shift away from Jewel being as integral piece to more of a 2-man game with NECA and Skylar. And I think Jewel was trying to figure out where Jewel fits. Because I'm going to tell y'all something about Skylar. If she's not looking for you, you're not getting the ball.
Yeah.
So, like, I hear y'all on Jewel should have done this and Jewel should have done that. Why is Jewel hiding? I also feel like, why wasn't Jewel getting the ball?
Skylar runs the team now.
I feel like it was because it was like, Skylar, you got to take this shit over. NECA, we need you in the middies. Jewel, I need you to play defense and kind of rest your knee up and let's get through this series so we can get to the semifinals and see what you can do. I feel like that's what happened, but it was rough.
It was rough.
Jewel's a mamba. Like, Jewel, that's a big dog. They don't like not hitting their benchmarks.
That's what she said, yeah.
That's a different mindset altogether. This is the first year I did not hit my benchmarks. We're putting the corporate model on the way we play. We are a profit-motivated center of production. And we did not hit our benchmarks.
Very corporate.
It's time for us to restructure.
Yeah.
That's a different mentality of player altogether. And I think when you take away their system of production and then they're trying to calculate, it's a rough time. But Nia, I know you're itching to say some shit, so go ahead.
I am, because we've spoken about this extensively offline, and I have just a bit of a different sentiment. I think that I agree that Jewel lost her identity somewhat in this team. Last year, she was the team. In 2023, she was the scoring, she was everything. They needed to bring in these pieces and build around her. But I think where Jewel got lost is more of a mental piece. Someone who thinks a lot like Jewel, who can be very logical, a little bit robotic. A lot of times we miss that heart piece, that emotional piece. And so we're trying to calculate and figure out where we made a misstep in terms of mechanics or benchmarks, as Jewel said. And instead of looking inside, so more of like, what's the emotional piece that I'm missing here that is throwing my game off? And so to me, I think it was more so of an identity thing. Jewel didn't know her identity on this team. One, as a leader, because she was last year. And now you have Skylar and NECA, who are both leaders in their own right. Skylar, we know, I mean, she's very vocal. NECA is a leader. She's also philosophical and just logical and just loud.
They both loud. Jewel's not loud. Jewel's the quiet storm.
No, her and Noel.
Figure out how to be a leader, be respected, and still be true to who she is and do the things that she needs to do. Additionally, in the Olympics, because of this identity crisis and this thing that she's been going through all season, then to go to the Olympics and not get to play in that last game, I think did a bigger number on her head and her heart than she may have wanted to acknowledge or can see. And so I think that's more of it than Jewel being hurt or her physically not being able to do the basketball. It's figuring out all those intangibles, all those additional things. Once she can do that work inside and figure out what that looks like for her and where she fits in this team, I think that the Storm will be freaking incredible, unstoppable.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to go from the WNBA scoring leader to this year. Jewel did not look the same. Even as a player, she just did not look the whole season. You know, she still averaged like 19 points a game because she's Jewel Lloyd. You know, she's Jewel Lloyd, but she just did not look the same. But I think to your point, like, I think there's been a lot of transition, and now you have NECA was in LA her whole career, and she was the centerpiece of LA. You know what I'm saying? And number 1 draft pick, you know what I'm saying? You got Skylar, who's been around, 11 years? She took all of last year off, right? So there's just a lot of transition that they had coming into this year. And in the exit interview, something they spoke about a lot is like, there wasn't always the buy-in. It didn't necessarily seem that everybody was bought into the vision of what this team looks like.
It takes longer than a few months together to build a culture.
True, because NECA and Skylar almost came in at the same time that the college kids came in. Like, you have a lot of time to look. This is their first year playing together, and even if you're superstars, you're not gonna just win a championship off vibes. You have to have a culture.
And then you add in Gabby Random, and then you have the Olympic break. One thing that's kind of interesting to me about the Aces, like they got their boo things and stuff. Some of them have kids, but they're like in each other's business.
Mm-hmm.
Like they show it to each other's baby showers and birthday parties, and have movie nights at KP's apartment, shit like that.
Mm-hmm. They're more than just coworkers,
right? Yeah, they homies for real, and they be in the group chat doing boom, boom, boom. But to me, because of a stage of life, a lot of the players in the Storm are too. When you're making that transition,
they're older players. They're older.
Yeah, like I gotta get to my kid.
I got kids.
Gotta get home.
Right. I'm getting married. This is serious.
I gotta meet with the WNBA folks.
I'm the president.
Like other responsibilities.
Right.
That it's not like nobody else is balancing their life that way. But when you're also moving to a new state, new city, and dealing with the newfound publicity of the W and all of those things too, I think that all plays a role in it.
Right.
And figuring out what the culture needs is going to be a huge part of it, because Noelle kept saying, like, I wasn't sure there was that buy-in. I wasn't sure there was like something about putting on that jersey. Like, this is a organization too that, in Q, you can speak to this probably better than any of us. The identity of the Storm organization has been Sue Bird.
20 years.
The face of that organization has been Sue Bird. And now you have this team of majority Black franchise level players, right? And who's going to be the face of the team, right? You've got that going on with the transition. You've got a coach who's very vocal about what it means to be a Black coach in this league. You've got players who are very vocal about what it's like to have Black coaching in this league.
That's why they came to Seattle.
All of that spaced out. Heavy is the crown.
Right.
When you're supposed to add some trophies to that case. I hope y'all know that. This is not going to happen again if you don't.
Right. That's the point.
I think building this incubator for you has a solid foundation.
New stadium, new practice
facilities, building the team around this particular player, got this coach.
Noelle's won 2 championships. Neck has won a championship.
You need to put some trophies in this case.
Right.
That's the standard that they're all setting for themselves. It's just about a matter of gelling, and it takes time to gel. I think next year they'll be better. They'll have some good conversations.
Yeah.
Some folks are going to have to step up. Some people are going to have to sacrifice, and then they'll be fine. But I do think it would help if they had an assistant, maybe somebody who was real passionate and fiery and brought that edge and made the game fun too, not just calculating. What if we brought somebody who had the energy, who knows the X's and O's, but has the energy and the creativity to build a culture and get buy-in and get people to run through a wall and see the game dip? You know, this great opportunity for us to hone our strengths and take care of each other. Like, I don't know, like a Teresa Weatherspoon or something like that.
Should be great.
My next question for you: what pieces or what player would you like to see the Storm add to their roster for next year?
I think I'm going to echo a little bit of what Coach Law said. There has to be a certain fitness, a certain culture from coaches and players about like a buy-in. But if it were me, this is the 2 things I think the Storm should add. We need a 3-point shooter. Any team that's at the top 4 right now, right? What did Connecticut do? Got Marina. Why? Because she shoots the 3. New York, Sabrina. I mean, anybody on New York can shoot. It's almost like Minnesota. Anybody can shoot the 3 in Minnesota, right? Who am I missing? The Aces, you know? If KP and even Asia Wilson will shoot the 3-pointer. Like, they have a shooter. Seattle needs to get a shooter. Some of our bench, like Victoria Vivians, Samantha Whitcomb, they can shoot the 3. They just were not productive in shooting the 3 this year. Skylar, Jewel, and Nneka are all in their 10, 11, 12 years in the season. They don't have another year to wait. They need a young shooter. They need it. And I think the other thing I would say is we need a true big, I think, at some point. Ezzy, she was blocking everybody. Ezzy was doing her thing as well, but NECA, she plays really well at the 4 because she's a little bit undersized at the 5. You know what I'm saying? And I think if we get a real shooter and if we get another true big, Mercedes Russell held it down.
Yeah, she did what she had to do.
She did what she had to do. But her and Samantha have been on the team a long time, and I don't know that their production has looked like what the team wanted. So I could imagine. I'm not sure that those folks and Victoria will be on the team next year. So I think really Seattle. They also have to re-sign NECA. We have to remember NECA is a free agent. So they have to re-sign her. I think you keep Jewel, pending all that, you keep Jewel, you keep NECA, you keep Ezzy, you keep Sky, you keep Jordan Horston, maybe Joyner Holmes.
You can't keep them. Sorry.
You think they're gone?
Jordan Horston. I don't know if you're getting the big you want to get.
Oh, you think we got to trade or what?
I think you have to trade. Think about who you have to pay.
True.
You know?
Even NECA is going to be costly.
It's going to be a bill, as she should, and she produced this year.
She earned it. Seattle wouldn't be where they were this year without NECA, that's for sure.
Then Ezzy's a due for a bump, isn't she?
She just resigned. So I think she just signed 2 years this year.
1 year guaranteed, probably.
Yeah, probably. I think Jewel has another year. Skylar has a year. Like Ezzy has maybe a year or two. You know what I mean? Guaranteed.
Yeah.
So they got 1 year to make it happen.
If they're going to do something, you have to pay them.
So if they're going to make it happen in this next year, who's the one player in the league, or they could not be in the league currently, that you're going to get to add to the Seattle Storm roster today? Like, who are you getting for play?
To be honest, I said a lot about the 3-ball, but personally, I really do think I would focus on the big. I think the shots come. So I think you know who I'm going to say. I'm going to say Miss Bree Jones on the Sun. I think I would love to see a true post on Seattle. I think that would do so much for us, just like being able to get rebounds. We just didn't rebound. You know what I'm saying? Get in some big shot blocking. But I'm going to throw this out there. Let me know how you feel. On the low, because I think her stock took a dive. I think if we get Miss Kia Stokes for the low, I think Seattle could do something with that. Let me know what y'all think.
For a team with a lot of offensive weapons, I think you could get Kia and be okay. Is she the best option? Absolutely not. For me, if I'm the Seattle Storm, I'm going to see if I can go get Camila Cardoso.
Ooh,
she's going to be low cost, high producing. She's going to get rebounds.
I mean, you can't. Like you said, no restrictions or something.
No restrictions for fun. For me, Kia being an offensive liability, it's not okay, especially when you're talking about, say you bring Gabby Williams back. Yeah, she's a great defender. She can do all things athleticism-wise, but sometimes her scoring is not there.
Right.
The 3-ball not hitting, you don't want to have to question where your offense is going to come from. Right. Just to add that piece in to have those rebounds. You want to have both. I like Bree Jones for you as a better pick, even though she's with my Connecticut Sun. I don't want to give her up, but to me, that's the better option over Kia. Even though you could probably get Kia for a steal.
That's the only reason I say Kia, because we could probably not give too much up and get Kia.
Yeah.
I like Bree. I like Camilla, would be really fun. What about you, Coach?
Kalani Brown.
Good one. I love Kalani.
I think she would fit well in that group. And I think they have players that play the game so clean. In my opinion, that sometimes it's a little predictable. Gabby's not really that. Gabby's more just like an athletic freak of nature, where you don't know what Gabby's going to do for real. I'd like to see somebody who is like the garbage woman, like clean the boards up, move away, and clear space for NECA and get physical in a different way. Give that enforcer energy. And I think that's kind of what they're missing now. NECA is not to be tried. That's not what I'm saying. I just think there needs to be a little more of a, like, I like the idea of Kia, but I think it's too similar of a, like,
too calm, you think?
And the Storm needs some grit.
They do. I'm telling you, Jones is the one.
We need some grit. And Bree Jones is the right piece. I don't know that Connecticut will give that up.
She's a free agent, though. She'll be a free agent.
Will be. Is she unrestricted?
She'll be unrestricted this next year.
Oh, okay. Well, they might have to then.
I'm trying to say I need to do something. I'm
They
telling you.
might have to then. Ooh,
Yeah.
let's talk about all the way the other side of the country, Lord.
Home. Come to my home.
Well, this has been so fun. We're super hopeful for what Seattle's going to do next year. Can't wait to see what moves they make. Before we get out of here, we've been trying to show love in this basketball world lately. It's been a lot of negativity and hate. It's been a little bit of a heavy season. So we've been trying to give people flowers or just a little bit of love. So is there anybody in the women's basketball universe, coach, player, whoever, that you want to give some flowers to?
Do you mind if I uplift coaches? Can I uplift
Sure.
coaches? So I'm gonna obviously go Miss Teresa Weatherspoon. I just feel like there's a lot of good that she did, and I think we could see even at the New York game when they showed her highlights and just like her emotion, it's like there is still a lot of pain there. I think should this ever in a wonderful world get back to her, I think we all three agree that we would just uplift her. The things that she did for that organization were really positive. We remember who she was as a player, what she did for the W's. She deserves her flowers, absolutely. And then the other person I would give is Miss Cheryl Reeves. No matter how you feel about her as a person, I did not expect Minnesota to do what they did this year. Minnesota has looked.
Talk about wisdom.
I know Connecticut stole one in the Lynx home. Shout out to them, but I did not expect Minnesota.
That's that veteran experience because the Aces, we dodged a bullet not having to face Minnesota at all.
Fee is looking. Fee first 2 games, 38 and then 41 points. Fee is gonna get hers. UConn, like she's gonna get hers. The way that team is coached, even the young players, Carlton, everybody looks comfortable. Everyone looks developed. Caleb McBride looks comfortable. I think a lot of that comes from the coach having a great system, a great identity for the team. So I'll give her flowers.
Machine over there.
I love that. Beautiful bouquets, two perfect people. So we've been doing a nasty work of the week lately. We like to pick a play, but this week we're not going to pick a play because we saw on Twitter and the interwebs that something so nasty, so egregious happened at the Fenerbahce game in Turkey. A fan decided to let off flares into the middle of the court while the game was going on, putting not only the players, coaches, refs, everyone in potential physical harm's way. And so we just talk about how nasty that is. And it goes into a larger conversation of player safety of what we've been talking about all season and how this new fandom is so great because it's growing the game, but it's bringing so much negativity as well and causing the safety issue. I just wanted to know if you guys saw that, if you have any thoughts on it, or just thoughts about this new fan base and what this means for women's basketball.
Coach, what say you?
Violence, and we don't know whether it's the case or not, but any is particularly violence motivated by bias is wrong, no matter who's doing it, no matter what the setting. The game, the leagues, FIBA, everybody was prepared to grow the game. Everybody wanted the money, the marketing, the publicity, to build the capital. But nobody wants to grow the level of accountability that needs to be set for the way bias hate manifests and puts players at risk. Nobody wants to take accountability for the safety risks these things pose. Nobody wants to acknowledge how media narratives around players that paint them as villains and paint them as aggressors, paint them as the violent and versus the vulnerable, helps stir the pot when it comes to these things, right? And so we've been in an environment now for months where every media outlet has fed into these narratives. Twitter has fed into these narratives, and people just keep wanting people to say, no, none of that matters. It's just talk. Exactly. That may be true when the folks, I'm not saying that NBA players don't ever face issues or overseas players don't ever face issues of safety. But what I'm saying is that may be true when the resources and intentionality is put in place around what these folks mean as far as the value beyond their contract and their skill set. Like when you're appropriately setting up venues for success in making sure we're not carrying certain things on our person when we enter stadiums. You put resources and thought and intentionality and protocol behind that. When you've scanned the social media and had resources in place for players who are being stalked or have suspicious activity or things of that nature, like you have in other professional leagues, when you've taken the steps to hold media accountable when they do shit that's wrong, and badges and credentials are taken away so they can't continue to upplay narratives that put players at risk. But we haven't seen anybody on any level take full intentionality and accountability to take those types of responses. And it's just going to get worse because we are dealing with women. We are dealing with queer people. We are dealing with people of color who have a spotlight on them that they have not ever had. And we have a lot of the populace, not everyone, but a lot of the populace that is entering this space is not interested in women's basketball. They're interested in targeting women. They're interested in targeting queer people. They're interested in targeting people of color. Like, that's not what we want. We want people to be safe. But when y'all keep saying, oh, yeah, it's not real. Oh, yeah, the players are the real villains. Oh, yeah, they're making it up. Why is it always about those things? We just want basketball. We just want basketball. Too fucking bad. Look what's happening now.
Exactly. It just goes to show that as much as we like to say that sports is purely for entertainment or sports is removed from society, it's just not true. A lot of times it is a reflection of what goes on in society, especially in the W when we're talking about women's basketball. We have a lot of people that are at the forefront that don't fit into these intersections. They're just not familiar with how quickly things can escalate or get out of hand. When you have people that live in this intersection, live in this day to day, telling you, hey, I don't feel safe, or hey, this is something that could escalate to be more dangerous, you're supposed to listen to them and validate those feelings. But instead, they're being invalidated and saying, this is just something that's online, toughen up, face it. It's just something that comes with stardom. And it's just unacceptable. And I just feel like, even though this particular incident happened overseas, we've seen multiple instances in the W so far. The lady coming in with the fake nails, Dijon Carrington being stalks and emails, all types of things, how quickly these things can escalate and how poorly the league has handled it. And like Coach Saul said, it's just going to potentially get worse, especially when we think about the draft class that's coming up with Paige Beckers, the fandom that surrounds her. And it's just like, at what point are we going to actually acknowledge these issues and put some parameters in place to fix them? Because a statement on Instagram at the end of the league, at the end of the season, when we've been telling you this is an issue all year, that's lackluster, is not going to cut it. It just simply isn't.
And at the end of the fever season, right? Not even at the end of the regular season.
And after Caitlin Clark had to ask a referee in security for someone to leave a game, right? It's not just like we only want people of color and queer people protected. We want everyone protected.
Everybody.
You all have not invested the resources, time, and thoughtfulness. You have not been mindful about it. You ignored it for whatever reason. Maybe it has to do with the fact that you don't think these people deserve your protection.
If you protect the most vulnerable, then those that are less vulnerable are always also going to be in those protections.
Always.
That is like, okay, we have people that are queer, women of color, women, non-binary, all of that. Put those protections in place, and everyone else will also be protected.
Yeah.
And I think the sports world generally can do better on this. Every weekend after the NFL games on Sunday, there are videos of fights in the stands. I remember vividly being at Hawks games, and they implemented a policy where if you bought a bottled drink, they had to take the cap from you because they didn't want people throwing caps at players. It's not like this hasn't happened before. The level and type of animus is different. This hasn't been handled well by risk management folks who are to protect players. Let's be real. If you were a Q or a Nia or a Sade and 8, 10 to 15 years old going to these games, the crowd was mostly little kids and old people. It was not big. They made sure that they didn't want, security and other excess labor to be a cost center, so there wasn't much. You know, you would show up on Sunday at 3 and go to the game and walk
Yep.
right up on the court in some arenas
Right.
right after the damn
Mhm.
game. It wasn't
Right.
a barrier. We are not there anymore. We got to catch up. Y'all, you're prepared to get all the money, but I'm just thankful nobody got hurt.
Right. Yet.
I hope it stays that way.
I agree.
We live in a crazy world with people who want attention for doing crazy shit. It's got to get better.
I think if I could add in just a couple things too, I think you both said it well. I was listening just to echo some of the sentiment, like silence is violence in a lot of ways. And I think there have been a couple key people who have been very silent and who have not taken accountability for the ways that fame can bring in good and bad attention. And I think there was a bit of dishonesty about what sort of fame came with them, you know who I'm alluding to. But I also think the W was unprepared. They didn't get charter flights into this year. And even when they got charter flights, who was the first team that got it? Indiana Fever, right? It wasn't until the rest of the team complained that they also began to get charter flights. But
He deserves protection.
They do. And I think it is interesting that this league was built on the backs of black and queer folks, queer folks, black and queer folks. And I don't know, the league has always acknowledged that before this year. The league has always been bought into that identity. We look at 2020, there's a documentary on how important the league has been in terms of elections and politics and say her name and Black Lives Matter. But this year, there's been a silence. And that's what I mean. I think that's purposeful. I think it's because there's a lot of money in being quiet and a lot of money in negative.
Complicit.
There is. It's a lot of money in being complicit.
For sure.
And I think the league has decided that we're going to be silent this year to a lot of things that feels like they sold out their base and for a lot of money, which I get. The media deals and the attention and the highest attendance in 20 years and all that stuff is really exciting. That is really good. And I think we all thought that would feel a lot better. There's been a lot of growing pains, and some of them unnecessarily, because we can say racism is bad and still be okay as a league.
Yeah.
What are your closing thoughts on those things?
My closing thoughts, you made some really great points, Q. I think that the league chose to be unprepared. We knew this was coming. Angel Reese has been talking to us since 2021 when they won the championship. Shout out to our girl, that she's been receiving violence, and we've seen it firsthand, and we knew that it would be an issue. BG, who had been receiving violence and had issues. So it's just
locked up in a
Russia, like
issues. There's issues.
And
then there's that.
And then getting dragged from the airport last year and just all other types of security concerns. And so this is something that was predictable. And they chose to not be steadfast about it. And even worse, they're not even being reactionary. They're just being lackluster. And so to your
they have to tiptoe and walk on eggshells. That's my take.
To me, it's really sad because, like Coach Law mentioned, as well as you, this is a league that is built upon Black and queer folks that I've been following since I was a child, literally going to Detroit Shock games since I was a child. And so now having to worry about my safety when I'm going to these games, the safety of the players, coaches, all of those things, it just makes it less enjoyable. But it also makes you think, do these people see the value and the people putting so much into this league? And always makes me want to tell the players to stop putting so much in, because this league doesn't value you as a human first. And so it's just super disappointing. I just want them to do better so badly.
Yeah, they're tiptoeing on eggshells because they are like, we hear you, but we've got a segment every night on SportsCenter. We hear you, but we've got investors calling us up every day talking about, I want a team in this city. What do I need to do? We hear you, but Caitlin Clark's jersey sold over X amount. The stadium sold out. The season tickets sold out. We hear you. But it's not like Tania's point about what the rest of society gets. When you outcry and protest and march in the streets a whole damn summer, you get a federal holiday for the politicians in power to be off. And that's over someone dying. This, we've been telling y'all this is what could happen. Asia having a unanimous MVP season because she did that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we should be quiet and shut up because we acknowledge Asia. Y'all just don't like Cece because she's not one of you. We've been waiting to have one of us. Let us have one of us.
Yikes.
What did Pat Bev said? She has a more womanly body than anybody else. Just making up things to make her more relatable, rather.
Because people can think what they want. This is just my view. Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird said something on their podcast about what it means for queer Black folks to be a face of something. That's unheard of. It's a different pocketbook for them as business owners when they can have a doll and a bobblehead that their kid, who is a straight white kid, can go get. There are a lot of people who are uncomfortable with the idea, and it's not a majority of people, I think, that pay attention to this league genuinely. But there's a lot of people who are uncomfortable with the idea of their kid saying, I want to be the next Asia Wilson. I want to be the next Tina Charles. I want to be the next Jewel Lloyd. I want to be the next Sue Bird even. Because look at Sue Bird's lifestyle. Sports leagues in this country, they're thinking about who's going to buy their kids tickets and get their kids bought in to be a fan from age 5. This is like textbook that.
Right.
Only the stakes this time are a different level. Right. Because the people they are otherizing for the sake of protecting a certain image they want to be on the top and keep the status quo and solidify the hierarchy of what they're doing has never had to affect this many Black and brown folks who are also stars.
Who are the heart of the league. For the heart. Yeah.
It hasn't happened in another sports league.
Right.
To the same extent.
Right.
On platform where everybody can instantly see it.
Played out in the same,
It hasn't happened like this before. There's other players who have had horrible instances of discrimination and issues in the NBA. But it's, that is a different space with different money. And people like to knock that off to a different time.
Right.
I'd love to hear what Bird and Magic have to say about it now. I'd love to hear what the Muslim players who got blackballed from the league have to say about it now.
How many gay players are in the NBA?
I mean, I'd love to hear why.
There's no discrimination, but how many out gay players are there?
I'd love to hear why they don't come out.
Right.
Right. And so what they're not used to is they're used to people being like playing the role Cece. We've seen Cece play of like, I'm not going to be the one to speak up. That's not my job. I'm just the player. I didn't tell those people to say those things. I think the people who are saying the wrong things are trolls, but I'm not going to do anything to operationalize a change. They're not used to players who are willing to just say what they need to say and use their platform to resist.
They're
not used to that.
That's it right there, though.
Complying. Yeah. You don't pay these people enough to comply with your bullshit. Enough.
Sabrina, Sue. That's it. None of those. Because Caitlin Clark is not the first straight white girl in the league.
Ever.
She's not the first straight white girl in the league.
She has the coolest bumper of all of them.
Kelsey, who did Caitlin Clark, whose record did she beat? Kelsey Plum, who's also another straight white girl in the league. Different. What's different about that? Kelsey Plum
doesn't pass the ball well.
She also advocates for Black people. That's different.
Might hinder her brand.
It's different though.
That's different. They finally got one of us. There are people who are putting that on Caitlin.
Right.
Wear our cape.
Right.
We finally got one. We are not letting this go. We have the machine power and we're not letting it go.
They will blow it up. When Caitlin liked Taylor Swift's post on Instagram.
Oh yeah,
and all those. And white men were like, "Don't do that, please. Don't give in." And people were saying, "Don't give in to that. Those queer Black women, don't do that." Over her liking a post by Taylor Swift about Kamala Harris. I don't think we've seen anything like this.
She represents holding on to that era of social dominance.
Yeah. Yep.
that they don't want to go away. They can't let it go away.
And I don't even think she really, like, she might be more moderate because we don't know how she feels about these things, which is also an issue, in my opinion. You have a certain responsibility, but I also don't know that she is what they are making her to be. But is it profitable? Right, that. But is it
for
profitable?
anybody? I don't think anybody can truly be.
Right.
These people have warped in their mind, because that's what it is. That she represents this idealized, feminine, white, straight, middle America, mainstream, homegrown, patriotic.
Homegrown, like went to the local school, you know what I mean? Like everything.
She's done a lot of those things, but what does that have to do with hating queer people and Black people? What does that have to do with it? Where you come from and not represent hatred and bias, those things don't have to match up. Everything that she doesn't get isn't
to harm her or
harm.
Right.
But that's not what y'all are into. Y'all are into this social dominance.
But I also think part of the reason why she doesn't speak up is because she's surrounded by a little bit of yes men around her. And you look at that even in terms of her teammates. I'm surprised that her teammate, Aaliyah Boston, said, I had to deactivate my social media. Yes. Because I was receiving so much hate mail, so much hate on my social media platforms that I had to. And I was the rookie of the year. I was the #1 pick last year. Mm-hmm. You know, Caitlin came into my team. Realistically, we switch it around for her. But, you know, and then some of Caitlin's teammates would say, oh, well, what are we supposed to do about it? You know, looking at Kelsey Mitchell.
Well, you know, part of that, what you think is your responsibility.
Yeah.
Privilege lies in the I don't have to. I don't have to think about those things or consider that or use my platform for those things. I don't have to.
When has that ever been that
nice.
W? When has that ever been? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
I think the negative story run, it's more beneficial.
It's also a fact. I'm not going to ignore the fact that on some level, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
True. That's why I understand.
Because even if she did say there will be a bunch of people coming at her specifically as you said the wrong thing, you didn't say it right, why would you say it like this? And there'll be a bunch of people
late, it's not enough.
Them, you're a liberal, you're a snowflake, you're a whatever they make up. After a while, it has to just feel like noise.
Right. Let me just play, you know.
And the media is really the one I want to take accountability for a lot of this. Not even really the trolls, because the troll's going to troll. But the media have signed up for having a certain level of accountability and responsibility to the public and to ethics.
There's a code of ethics to journalism that is not being followed. Right.
They're lacking in diversity of both personnel and thought. Mm-hmm. It is a systemic issue. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And that
that's true. That's like rocket hard.
Both of those effects are shit. You have to fix it.
You have to.
That's a conversation across media platforms and across news outlets. How do we fix that?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because the money driver right now for the people who are in charge is divide everybody and conquer. Make everybody mad.
Well, players deserve better.
Players deserve better. We hope that everybody that was in the Fenerbahce situation in Turkey is safe, is mentally okay, and that they get to go on and have their game as scheduled. So that kind of wraps up today. Q, thank you so much for coming on to the pod, being our first guest ever. We appreciate you so much. This was like bringing the group chat to the pod. Super fun.
This was fun.
Have to have you back. Thank you guys for listening. Y'all know this is the Nasty Work Podcast. You know where to find us on socials at the Nasty Work Pod.
End up a guest.
The best pod. The best pod ever.
You follow, you subscribe, you message.
Come on. You'll have a lot of fun. Coach Law and Nia are both the best. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Make sure you guys comment, like, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one. Toodles.